The old GM Chevy tailgate held up by a ratchet strap. An American classic. Hey, it's Krez. Today we are going to be troubleshooting this tailgate.
In this video, I will be showing you how to replace rusted out tailgate hinges on most GM Chevy models from 99 to 06.
So if you got the old ratchet strap holding your tailgate life together, kind of gets annoying, right? Every time you got to get in and out of the tailgates.
This is a common point of failure for these trucks. Every Sierra or Silverado I've owned from these years has needed to have the hinges replaced.
So first up, we're going to de-strap. Drop the tailgate. So all you're really going to need for this are your basic tools, socket stab wrenches, that kind of thing. Impact driver if stuff gets hairy, and a bag of hinges. Might come in a box, but whatever, you get the point.
A few other things you may need for this project is an all-purpose cleaner, a flathead screwdriver, a wire brush, and maybe some sandpaper, a 13mm socket, an impact driver, some WD-40, and a rag to keep things clean.
And of course your favorite tailgating drink of choice, because after all, we are tailgating, pun intended.
These tailgate hinges are pretty rusted out. It could be worse, but nevertheless, we got a lot of play in the tailgate right now.
So the way to get your tailgate off is to lift up, get the tension off of them. Then you'll see there's these little metal clips, and you simply pry them out. You can usually get them with your finger, slide up like that, pop right out. Now we're on our last one. You gotta be ready to kind of take the weight of the tailgate, because it's gonna want to come back at you. Passenger side hinge is gonna be the one with the little notch in it. I don't know if you can see it, but we can feel it. On the back side, there's a gap in this part of the hinge, and then that's how we're gonna take it off. So what we need to do is pull the tailgate up slightly, like this, and then we'll come right out like that.
Once you get it tipped up to about a 30-35 degree angle, it pops right out. Slide it off of the other hinge, and we'll just take it and throw it in the bed. This hinge is pretty much rusted out. And the nub on this part of the hinge is, well, it's not there. Next step is to grab your 13mm socket, and it's really just a matter of breaking all these bolts loose so we can get the hinges off.
And if you find yourself in a situation where your bolts are rusty and flakier than a bowl of cornflakes, just grab the wire brush, flake them off, and pray.
The heads of the bolts were so flaky that I couldn't fit my 6-point 13mm socket on it, so I had to try to get that rust off, and it still fit, which was good. The use of a breaker bar may come in handy. Worst case scenario, you might have to grind your bolts off or drill them out and then re-tap the hole. We will also need to remove the hinge parts from the truck bed. If you find that the hinges don't come off once you've removed the bolts, simply grab your flathead screwdriver and pry them off. Once you have all the old rusted parts removed, you are ready for new parts. Here's a look at what the old rusted out hinges look like compared to the new ones, but you'll also notice this new one comes pre-rusted. So I actually ended up returning this set to get a new set of new ones before I install them. Now the best case scenario is that the corners of your tailgate aren't so rusted out that there's nothing left of them. So since we've still got a good amount of metal here, but we do have some rust, I'm going to prep and paint all of this. Now this step is optional, you don't have to do this, and obviously it depends on what the condition of your tailgate is actually like. To prep for painting, we want to remove any loose rust or parts that could become loose soon. You can do this with a wire brush, a grinding wheel, some sandpaper, or all of the above. If you have some flakes or bubbles, we need to try to get those off. One way you can do that is by simply taking a flat object like our screwdriver and chipping those flakes off. And then come back and sand or grind with a wire brush the new edge we just created. You can use an air compressor to blow away all the rust flakes, and then I'm just going to wipe down with a rag and some denatured alcohol to prep the surface. Also be using a rust inhibitive primer and a color matching paint. I did 2 coats of primer and 2 coats of the color matching paint. You'll notice the paint looks a little bit duller, and that's because it doesn't have a clear coat over the top. So that's the last thing I need to add. Now, if you have the option or the ability to powder coat these hinges, that would obviously be best. This paint will probably chip away fairly quickly, especially on the parts of metal that actually come in contact with one another. Next, we are ready to install the hinge receiver side. We'll simply fasten with our bolts. I decided to get new bolts for these two since the old ones were pretty rusted out. It would also be a good idea to put some anti-seize on these bolts before you put them in. These hinges are conveniently stamped with an L and R to mark left and right. The right side will be your passenger side hinge, the left side will be your driver's side. Next, we're ready to put the hinges on the truck, so line them up with the holes, put the bolts in and thread them by hand, being very careful not to cross thread them. And then we're ready to tighten them down with our 13mm socket. Repeat the same steps on the other side, and once we have all of these bolts tightened up, we are now ready to drop our tailgate in. So we got the hinge with the notch. Now we got our solid hinge on this side. That one's got to go in first. So we'll come in, slide it on, over to our notched hinge. Now pinch our fingers. Let me just snap our clips back in. Got tailgate once more. So there you have it. There's some troubleshooting and a hinge replacement on a 04 GMC Sierra. Obviously similar body styles, and like Silverado, other GM makes and models will be very similar to how this is set up. That's clearly not what we want. Look at them rust flakes. It's got more flakes than a Minnesota snowstorm. Oh yeah. Ooh, did I just spit on the camera? That ain't no good. Whoops.